The three main things that I feel like really move the needle the most is one, focusing on your ideal patient, focusing on the people that you want to see in the chair, that they want to see you while they're in the chair, because trust is there. Mutual respect and trust is what we like to say all the time, because it increases everything.
You have to point people in the right direction. And if you let people go too far in the wrong direction, you end up in a totally different place. It's planning versus scrambling. You won the football game because you game planned the whole thing and you got up by 10 points and you have the ball at the end of the game, or you are losing by 2 and you only have 30 seconds left and this Hail Mary is your last play. You can still win the game. You are running a 7-figure practice and you're doing it on 3 days a week. So how are you doing?
But to me, the three main things that I feel like really move the needle the most is one.
Welcome back to another episode of Dental Marketing Theory. I'm your host, Gary Bird. I'm the owner of SMC National, where we help offices just like yours level the playing field so you can grow the way that you want. But do you want to grow numerically, or would you rather grow to a 7-figure office only working 3 days a week? Today, our guest, Kirk Teachout, is going to break down the 3-pillar approach of how he does that at his practice and how he helps hundreds of dentists out there doing the same thing. It's very, very simple to understand. And some of it you're going to hear right away and you're going to think, okay, I can actually do that. But he actually breaks it down even further from there and tells you some of the pitfalls where you may get stuck. This is going to bring major impact to you. You're going to want to stay tuned for this one. All right. We are live here with Kirk, and I'm excited about this conversation because Kirk and I feel like I know him really, really well, but we've only talked maybe like a couple times. We just got to meet in person, but we interact on social media probably more than I interact with my family or anybody in my company. We are constantly interacting with each other online, responding to each other's comments in Dental Nachos. But it was great to meet you in person at Dental Intel event. You did a great job speaking, and it's been great to interact with you online. But the thing I'm most interested about is you are running a 7-figure practice and you're doing it on 3 days a week. So how are you doing that?
Yeah, well, that's a great question, right? Well, one is because my beautiful wife is the dentist and I have a vested interest in it. But also too is like, obviously there's a million little things that we could get into. But to me, the three main things that I feel like really move the needle the most is one, what I talked about it at the Dental Intel conference, was focusing on your ideal patient, right? So focusing on the people that you want to see in the chair, that they want to see you while they're in the chair, because trust is there. Mutual respect and trust is what we like to say all the time, right? Because it increases everything, not just numbers, but like in general, it increases the morale and increases the culture, environment. And so when you have the right people in the chair, it makes sense. Also, the difference of that versus catch them all, right? So if you're just constantly catching a ton of people, it's tough to filter out the people you don't want, especially once you've now worked on them. So legally and ethically, it's very difficult. So if you can filter them somehow on the front end, which is something I feel like we do very well, then it makes sense. But then the second point, besides the ideal patient, is the schedule. Getting super efficient in the schedule. And this is what me and a ton of those Dental Intel guys were talking about, is like how efficient we run our schedule to try to make sure that we not only can hit numbers, but also do it in a much simpler, stress-free way. So how can we get ultra efficient and be able to see as many patients as we can if we want to, but also hit the numbers that we need to be able to sustain and really grow. So that's super important. I feel like that's really my bread and butter, which is a schedule. I haven't found one doctor yet, that even multiple doctors, where I haven't been able to at least improve their schedule by multiples. But either way, it is what it is. But then the third thing really is the preparation for the day. So I talk about this 15-minute meeting that we have before our morning huddle. A lot of people have morning huddles. If you don't have one in general, it's terrible. You need to have a prep for your day, especially when you have a big team, or even a small team like ours. But we have a 15-minute meeting prior to our morning huddle with just the assistants and the doctors, where they go over their game plan for their day. And that's how we add easily an extra $3,000 to $4,000 a day. Just in, oh yeah, Jane over here wants a partial she's been thinking about for 6 months. She didn't do it last time she came in. We should just ask her if she wants to. Well, naturally, if you have 10 of those on the schedule that are coming in with little extra things, you can easily add 30%, 40% to your day. So we do that and then go to the morning huddle and then fill in the gaps. So those three things, right? So ideal patient, scheduling efficiency, and then really preparing for the day properly.
Voting is open for Dental Woo's top dental podcast. It starts on November 1st and ends on December 31st. Each vote supports the podcast. Last year, we won multiple top spots, and this year we're hoping to do even better. This year, our goal is to get 1,000 unique voters on this podcast. Help us reach our goal, and your vote will count. Voting is easy. Just click the link below and find Dental Marketing Go, and then submit it. It's super fast. I love that. I love that model. And what I want you to start thinking about, because this is going to be my next question, and I want to comment on the morning huddle, but I want to talk about how you help offices implement that, because those are, let's be honest, those sound like really simple things, right? Like it's so simple, but it's the devil's always in the details, right? So something about that prep meeting that you have, that 15-minute prep. So I have a daily stand up with our leadership team, and we've been doing it for about 4 or 5 months. And it has given me so much clarity in the company. It's given me so much clarity in what I should be working on. It's given me so much clarity on what to help with, because what happens is, and this happens if you're big or small, is that you get disconnected from what's going on the day to day, right? Whatever kind of, it doesn't matter what kind of business it is. And you have to point people in the right direction. And if you let people go too far in the wrong direction, you end up in a totally different place. And everybody's always heard the analogy of just like, if you're starting off here in a boat and you're just off by 1 degree, you end up in a whole different spot in the world than if you were right on course. And so it doesn't take big changes for your practice to go in a different direction. It's little changes, and someone has to keep adjusting back to those and keep pivoting and keep people on track. So I absolutely love that, that you mentioned that. But with that said, avatar, schedule, prep before your daily stand-up, how do you help people actually implement those things? Because they sound easy, but obviously if they were just easy and everybody would be doing them.
Right. And like you said, it's simple, not easy. Because at the end of the day, like you were saying, it's constant refinement and constant adjustments. Small adjustments, like at the beginning, sure, it's front loading the process. It's a lot of heavy moving, and the bigger you are, the harder it is to steer that ship in the right direction. So what I love to do is with those small practices, I love those quick wins where they're like going $4,000, $5,000 a day. And I'm just like, okay, simple calculation. Here's where your payroll's at 20%. Here's your daily goal. Go. And then they're up to $8,000, $10,000 a day like that, right? So it's super easy at that point. When you get a lot bigger, it gets a lot more complex, a lot harder. But to your point, I mean, the way that you do that is just simply by finding the right people for the position. And it's tough. But something that I try to do first is sit down and see what systems they have, see what systems they don't have. And see where those bottlenecks are where they feel like they're struggling, but then also ask them specific questions on those three things of, okay, are you doing this? No, I'm not doing a morning huddle. Okay, well, how hard would it be to just get your team there 15 minutes before your patients get there? Not hard at all. I'm like, okay, great. I'm not asking you to get there 45 minutes like we do, but like still get there 15 minutes early, simple meeting, just get it done, and you'll see an increase of massive proportions just in that small thing. But like you were saying, simplifying it. Just simplify. So there are 2 questions we ask. The first one has kind of a 2-part set to it is, what are we doing today? With this patient specifically, they go through the whole list. What are we doing today? And how can we maximize it? So anything that was pending that we could add on to today, if it's possible. And then what is their next appointment? Those 2 things. Because every patient should leave with 2 things, their next appointment and their next hygiene appointment as far as treatment goes. So if you maximize treatment, make sure they get on the schedule, they don't fall through the cracks. That's one way that you can make sure that you grow. and also maximize your production. The second thing that we focus on into the morning huddle is on the hygiene side. It's like, okay, this is what we're focusing on. This is something we could pop over because we have a hole on the doctor side, and we know that because
So you're creating alignment.
now,
You're making sure that they understand that if something comes up, here's how we're going to handle it.
Yep.
Because it's different
exactly.
every day.
In the front,
it might be the morning that's empty, or the afternoon that's empty, or the whatever.
Right. And that's something that when I create these templated schedules, because they're not the same every single time, because some people do same day crowns like we do. Some people don't. Some people do implants. Some people don't. So when I create these templated schedules, I purposely build in 2 redundancies. So I don't like doing same day treatment unless I have the space. But for the most part, I like to have one bird in the hand versus 2 in the bush. I'd much rather have numbers where they need to be and be consistent in that and grow that way than have a $4,000 day. I'm trying to figure out how to get to $10,000 and we're having to place it together every single day.
Yeah. You're just basically it's planning versus scrambling, right? It's like, it's you won the football game because you game planned the whole thing and you got up by 10 points and you have the ball at the end of the game, or you are losing by 2 and you only have 30 seconds left and this Hail Mary is your last play. You can still win the game. It's a little more stressful and a lot more job risk and things like that.
Right. But there's only one Tom Brady in dentistry. Okay. So I don't know who he is yet, but there's somebody out there that can do that by 4 touchdowns and come back and win the Super Bowl. But I have yet to see it. So I'd much rather understand it and have it on the schedule. And so I purposely build in one redundancy being emergency visits, having that to strategically placed to where if somebody falls off on the doctor's schedule, now we have work. And then the last redundancy is hygiene. So if we can get somebody in, great, but that's not the goal. The goal is to get that rescheduled. And it's also the verbiage you say to the patients. I mean, all sorts of things, but that's the main thing is like the scheduling efficiency, building those redundancies and systems in to where you have the consistency.
Love that. That's great stuff. All right. So people are going to hear this and they're going to be like, that's simple, right? Where do people mess this up? Where do people come in? They hear this, they start doing this, and then it's just like absolutely dumpster fire because they didn't calculate it right. Their motivation wasn't right. Their mission wasn't right. Their culture wasn't right. Whatever it is. What are the ways that people really mess this up when they try to tackle it?
Sure. I'd say that, man, I think there's probably, it's kind of a 2-part question. So for the first obvious answer, if you're not a good leader, you're not going to get any of this done. If you can't effectively lead your team.
Well, there's 67% of the dental industry right there. You guys can all tune out now and all right, now speak to everybody else.
Right. So if you can't effectively lead your team, I'm not saying I'm perfect. I'm not at all. My wife's not perfect either. But if you can't effectively lead your team to say, hey, this is what we're doing now, and this is what I want you to do, and not dictate, but just lead them through that process and give them the resources and the ability to take responsibility, then you're not going to be able to do it.
Okay. So who's actually leading the office? Is it you or your wife?
Both.
Together. So like you're like co-CEOs, you would say?
Yeah. I mean, she runs more of the clinical side. Okay. I run more of the system side and to make sure everything runs.
So you're the COO and she's the CFO. Yeah. Okay. And then you're making joint. Yeah. Okay. So what would you say to a doctor that's trying to do both? I'm just going to make a wild guess here. Your wife's probably more clinically inclined and you're more operation and systems inclined, and you happen to be married, so you don't have to worry about like power trips or, you know what I mean, any of those kind of things. Most of the clients that you're working with probably don't have this situation, unless it's like there was a big time in dental where it was a lot of like husbands were the dentist, and the wife was running the office. But that I've seen that more times than not turn into disaster where it just is misalignment. I'm not saying that people can't do it, because I have seen people do it, but I've just seen a lot of people mess that up. So let's assume that the bulk of people listening to this don't have your situation. Walk me through that side of it. How are they handling that? Because they're probably going to have, your role is probably going to have to be the office manager, right?
Yeah, it would. And this is where most of my clients land. They don't have an office manager, right? But I figure out a way to automate and delegate as much as possible. So there's a system that I use and kind of a framework that I use to really sit them down, and I have them write down every single thing that they do every 15 minutes. And they can do it for however long, but I want to see if they're numbing patients, if they're scanning patients, if they're doing impressions, if they're doing x-rays. Like, I want to see every single thing that they're doing in addition to drilling. And then I want to have them star everything that does not require their license. And then I show them and help them process that delegation.
Yeah, that's so good. So what I've noticed in the dental industry is that the dentist will allow somebody who's making $80 an hour, $100 an hour, with some crazy amount of money per hour, do a minimum wage task like filling in a spreadsheet and things like that. And it's just because of peer. Oh, you're here to just do it. You fill in the report, and then I'm like, hey, what are you working on? And they're like, oh, I'm filling in this spreadsheet that you sent me for marketing. I'm like, dude, you're the treatment coordinator. You're the office manager. You shouldn't be doing that. You make way too much money to do that. You're literally burning money, because we could hire a high school kid to do that. You know what I mean? For minimum wage. Nothing against high school kids, but it was like anybody could do that job. You should be focusing on revenue generating things. And it's interesting because in the business world, non-dental, we do a similar thing with time management, but we don't have the market clinical license versus non. We have a market. Was that a strategic task that you're working on? Was that an administrative task? Because then we can start to bucket where their time's going and where to free them up. I absolutely love that approach.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, most people, I mean, let's be honest, doctors are control freaks. Okay. I said
You
that.
said
okay.
it, yes. But I didn't disagree. They're perfectionists.
No, they're control.
They're perfectionists
Yes.
is what it is. It's not,
Yeah.
I don't think a lot of dentists want to be controlled just to control. They're perfectionists.
No.
And they want a perfect outcome.
Yeah, exactly. And they don't believe that somebody will do what they will do. And they don't. They won't. And that's fine. But you've got to be okay with 80%. Yeah. So yeah. And that's the thing. It's like you've got to be able to delegate, because so many doctors that I talk to are in that position of one practice, maybe a team of 5 to 10, maybe 15, depending on how big they are. And so they've got to learn how to effectively delegate and be okay with leading their team in the way that they need to, so they can focus on the dentistry.
Yeah, because they're the only. Because
my goal was.
Because they're in the way, and just to help some dentists that are listening to this, you're the only one that can do the dentistry, right? Like no one else can do it in your office. So we have to delegate as much time to that as possible. And just so you know too about the 80-20 rule is that you need to be okay with people doing it at 80%. All entrepreneurs go through that, and all businesses. No one's going to work as hard as me in my company as me, period. And that's always going to be the case forever inside of my company. And I used to not understand that. And I'm like, why is everybody lazy? And it's like, they're not lazy, bro. They're just, you have a vested interest. You have a high upside opportunity and other people don't. So they're not going to work as hard as you. And it's like, oh, okay, that makes sense. So then I had to lower the bar of what it was acceptable in my brain. That helped me interact with people. Dentists have to do the same thing. You have to lower the bar. They don't see the world in the way that you see the world. And then that frees you up to then go do the thing that only you can do as a dentist.
Right. Exactly. And so since that's the situation most dentists are in, practice owners that I talk to, I've had to find a fix for that, which has worked really well. Because like I talked about this weekend, even to somebody is like, I have a client that hasn't increased in revenue in the last 4 months, but I'm like, okay, well, how's it going? Like, what's going on? Are you okay? Like, are you enjoying the program? She's like, yeah, it's great, but it's become easier. It's become better, and I'm taking off time, and I'm still seeing the same numbers. Yeah. I'm like, okay, yeah, because that's still a pay raise.
It is a pay raise, yeah, and that's the one thing that some people don't understand is that there is a world where you can work smarter, not harder, and we all know that phrase. But life can be really good if you manage it properly. I saw something that I started to do that literally changed my life, changed my outlook on things, and just the way I feel. and I started doing this a long time ago. I used to take meetings every single day, starting all day. Like if someone was like, oh, I'm on the East Coast, I want to meet at 8 o'clock Pacific Standard. I'm like, oh, 5 a.m. Okay. I'll meet. And it's just like, and eventually I was like, no. I don't take my first meeting. This doesn't mean this is when I start work, but I don't take my first meeting till 10 o'clock, 10 a.m. It's like, that's when I take my first meeting. I also don't take meetings on Wednesdays and Fridays anymore. So now I end up sometimes getting emergency meetings like, oh no, this isn't working in the company, or, oh no, there's a problem. I need to meet. I'll meet with you, but it's impromptu. It's not scheduled on my calendar. That has given me so much. And I guess what? Everything still gets done. Everything that I used to do still gets done. I haven't lost any opportunities. I haven't shrunk. Everything, I get more done. And guess what? I feel way better doing it. That small change didn't impact revenue, didn't impact growth, but it brought massive impact in my life. And that's a huge W. Like that's a huge W. Even though I didn't make more money from it necessarily, it freed me up to do more by doing less, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and that's something that I really push on the scheduling efficiency. So we dictate our schedule. We don't allow the patients to dictate the schedule. So, you think about it, when you have to have foot surgery or something, they're like, okay, be here at 5 a.m. on Friday. Why is dental any different? Well, it's like if you tell them, oh no, Friday doesn't work, like, sorry.
Yeah. Then we're going to push you out 6 more months, and we can do that Wednesday you want in 6 months if you want. You're just going to deal with a broken foot.
Right. And so what we do is we ask them what day works better for you. And then we have a specific slot. Like, okay, well, root canal is going to be at 10 a.m. Oh, I really want to get out, in the afternoon. I'm like, I'm sorry, we can't. Like, it's 10 a.m.
On that day. So we can do you in the afternoon, but it would be on this day.
Sure. Yeah. Right. Yeah. And you template that out. But I only have emergencies at 10:30, depending on how we rearrange the schedule, and at 2 o'clock. That's the only time.
Yeah.
Unless I'm filling a gap. But that's you dictate the schedule. You don't allow your patients to dictate your schedule, and your chaos will automatically increase or decrease, really.
Bro, your camera and your lighting's really good. It's really good. Very impressed. You're the first person that's come on to my podcast that I'm like, stink, is mine? I need to dial mine in a little bit more. Most of the time people are dialing into me, and yours is really good. I love it. So,
well, I mean, I did do video for a long time before our practice. So I was in the music industry and I had to do a ton of stuff. So yeah.
Yep. That's awesome. You look really good, man. You're killing it. You're killing it on all fronts. What can you tell us about your program? And maybe if it's just, hey, reach out to me. That's great. You can drop the information. Or if you have like,
sure,
here's how you sign up and here's how much it costs, or whatever you can share with me. What can you share with me about your program?
Yeah, I mean, you can go to the sevenfiguredentist.com. It's spell out 7. But I mean, there's plenty of ways that you can get a hold of me, but the main place is just on Instagram at Kirk Teachout, because I am on there talking to people all the time. I mean, I talk to hundreds of doctors a month, just trying to help simplify their systems. And really, that's really what it comes down to, is I want to, in a chaotic industry, just simplify everything. So that way, and give them that game plan. So that way it makes them easier. And honestly, I coach myself out of a job.
That's awesome.
So it's totally fine.
Opposite of most consultants out there. Most consultants make things really complicated on purpose. And then you pay them $5,000 a month for a long period of time to unwind everything, all the.
Yeah, I mean, my financial advisor would be happier with that, but yes, no, it's not how I like to do it.
That's awesome. And your drop your Instagram handle one more time for me.
Yeah, at Kirk Teachout, KirkTeachout.
That's awesome, man. I really admire your simple communication. I know it's not simple. It's not easy to execute, but I appreciate that you've done it enough to where you can articulate it in a way even like somebody like me can understand. So that's awesome, man. You absolutely crushed. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, thanks, man.